Hey guys, Savat here, aka Doom Piggy, and I'm back with another Eve Echoes video. This time I'm going to talk about Harbinger fittings. So, my first video was just an experiment of basically what was going on and what I saw some other people doing. And this particular one I want to actually go through and show you some of the different ways that I can fit this thing. One of my favorite fits for PvE for the longest time has been this. I'll fit a large shield booster, oops, I don't want the Mark V one. Now in here I always like to grab a little bit more damage in most cases. Sometimes it's not needed. But with this particular build, it works out just fine. I'll use a basic heatsink, and normally I will put in a marketeer tracking computer. Now for my high slots, just to make this a little bit quicker, I've got way too much loot sitting in here. These should be my beam lasers. Yeah, I don't want those. I want the pulses. I like the pulses. Okay, now we don't have a lot of power grid left over, but we really don't need much of anything in here. Now on this one particularly, we have an optimal range of about 20, we can go up to about 30 km. This makes this perfect for whatever you're fighting. So usually we can fit in here a stasis webifier, a tracking disruptor, and you can use a target painter, which I've found in this particular build isn't really necessary, or missile guidance. Another thing that you can do is you can put in the armor reppers or the shield reppers. I don't have any shield reppers. I think, do they take a lot of, no, they don't take any power grid. So yeah, you should be able to fit those in just fine as well. Or, I mean, if you really want to, I don't know if we have the power grid in this particular build. Maybe. Yeah. Boom. So that's cutting it pretty close. Now, what is my optimal range on this, though? About 12 km, where you're actually going to be making use out of it, 50%. Alright, so this particular ship here, as you can see, is doing 634 DPS. My rigs are the crap. I have a semiconductor memory. I'm actually using another prototype semiconductor memory. And here I have an auxiliary energy router prototype. Now this one here, the reason why I haven't gone for a higher one is because it does what I need it to do. As you can see, I'm able to actually fit everything in my power grid that I need to, and I am just fine. Now capacitor is definitely not stable in this particular ship. Not at all, not even with this running. But it seems to work just fine. Oh, my other rigs here, they're as normal. I have a laser burst aerator 2, I have a laser ambit extension 2, and a laser collision accelerator 2. Not bad. The 662 DPS will get applied fully because of the drone being so close up. If we go ahead and undock. Now, one of the cool things about this particular build, I know Mars ships are normally meant to be armor tanks, but it can fill that large shield repper. And the large repper is really what makes this work. So if I activate both of those, make sure I'm on shield this time, as you can see, the resistances across the board are pretty good, even the EM resistance. everything is above 50%. And these aren't even the best ones that you can actually get. And the shield booster, since it's a large shield booster, is going to boost for 676. It's not bad at all. Now this optimal range here, and tracking speed of 52, means that this can pretty much take out any of your low tier story missions and even some of your harder story missions, like actual events, no problem. Just running the boosters, we're sitting about 96. If we put all our lasers together, let's put all of our E-War up there. And let's just pick a simple mission and go do it. Now this is going to be a joke of a mission, but it's just so you can really see, and then we'll come back and we'll look at some of the other fittings.
Warp drive active.
This one is kind of like an up-close personal brawler, and again, with your defense, your armor, you have 8,000 armor hit points, 6,000 shield hit points. Without any of that running, it doesn't look so hot. But again, running that large shield repper against all of these smaller stages, and like I said, even some of the larger stages, it's pretty good, especially if you're going to be going up against stuff that's doing explosive damage. But personally, for the missiles, this is going to give you a much better all-around defense, since missiles apply damage of all types, and railguns, I believe, are primarily kinetic with a little bit of thermal. So pretty good. Now, as you can see in here, I don't actually have an afterburner or anything like that. This ship is already stupid slow.
Active.
When you put an afterburner on it, it does definitely help. It basically will double the amount of time that you can travel. I think it goes from like 200 to 400. But still, for the grand scheme of things, you shouldn't be needing to travel around too terribly much if you're going to be, well, right in the middle of everything. So with this particular one, we want to actually set our orbit, and let's do about 15. And it should lay waste to missions quite quickly. And this would be the normal fit that I use. Now, I did bring a tracking disruptor. I shouldn't have done that for this one. I should have brought the ballistic one, the missile one. Yeah, we want to warp to 0.
Warp drive active.
So I am going against Caldari. That's kind of with the E-War stuff. You kind of really need to know what you're going up against. This will still be helpful versus Caldari because they will have turrets. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming in. We'll just lock up everything, set orbit, click on that, and things should die. With that hot, this is sitting at 792 DPS. It should just clear out these guys, no problem. Like, I really don't have to do anything at this point. We're going to do the same thing. I'll set orbit to that one. I guess we could launch those if we really wanted to. Doesn't particularly matter. And again, just look at defense. I mean, these missiles aren't going to be doing hardly anything to us. We'll set orbit again. For this one, I'll go ahead and throw on the tracking disruptor on that guy. And heck, why not? We'll throw on that as well. Here, be webbed. And at this particular point here, we can actually just start collecting our loot. It doesn't really matter. And that's it. I don't even know why that's on. So it can lay waste to all your missions pretty quickly whenever you need to boost your shield. I mean, it's pathetically easy. One of the things about this particular ship is its power grid is so big it allows you to actually do things like this vid. And now your lasers do take your capacitor as well, and the higher tier capacitor batteries that you can get, the better that you're going to be. Let's go back now. So it actually works out phenomenal. I'm going to go ahead and open up a soda here. And again, for all mission types, it pretty much works phenomenal for. The only thing I would say you wouldn't really want to use this particular build against is Amar. And your weakest resistance, which is still going to be 50%, is 2 lasers. It also, like you saw, it's not cap stable. You can get more range out of your turrets if you need to. So if you do have something that is flying and not hitting an optimal range, you can always activate the tracking computer, and it will put you back in range for that temporary time that you need to, as well as a mixture between the Weber and the tracking computer and the high tracking speed that these turrets already have. There's not really anything you can't hit. And so up close and personal, you're all good. Everything will just go completely smoothly. There's not going to be a mission that's really going to give you any type of scare, and you'll be able to control range with your E-War modules, whichever you decide to bring. I'd still do recommend, if you're going to be doing these lower tier missions, or pretty much any of the regular missions that aren't out of a major storyline mission, and even in a lot of the tier 6 major storyline missions, always bring a Weber. Weber's going to help you out versus the small frigates that show up, and just pretty much let them get instantly vaporized. The Nosferatu here, it's kind of optional. A lot of times everything dies so quickly, you're not really going to be sucking much cap off with it. And so it's up to you. That's going to be for more prolonged fights, which you might get into. I mean, it doesn't really happen with this particular build. I mean, everything right now is just melts like butter. The only problem this ship has in general, in my opinion, is its warp speed. Its warp speed is so god-awful slow, getting from point A to point B. It's going to take you the better part of forever. But this build, yeah, I know, it's a Mar. It's not supposed to shield tank. But you lose 2,000, but you're never even dipping even close to hitting that 2,000 marker. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if these shields were 5,000. You would still be okay. Your shields aren't going anywhere. As long as you can rep them up and keep everything topped off, really, you're good to go. So even though it's not cap stable at all, anywhere near cap stable, you don't really ever use the shield booster except to top yourself off. Now that being said, it's why do you really need to have a large shield booster fit to this anyway at that particular point? And again, it can be used in a lot of the harder missions. I just don't have one to actually do with this currently. Well, I do, but that's a whole video on its own. Alright, so I guess the next thing I could possibly do is the other mission running variant of this particular ship. When running missions, damage is key. As you saw there, for those very low level missions, they barely even touch your shields. Well, when you're running through missions that fast, why not just apply all the DPS? I don't ever run any more than 3 of these. I can, I guess, but 3 is normally where I stop, if I can ever find it. Alright, so I've got 3 basic heat sinks in now. And this puts you at 689 DPS. Not actually hitting that 700 mark yet. We'll get there soon. I got more skills to train up. In here you can pretty much use whatever you want. So, let's see if I can actually fit this. Yeah. Alright. So we got an afterburner to get around a little bit more. Again, you can change these E-War things to whatever you want them to be. Anything is useful. And with 689 DPS and 3 of those, you can pretty much have those up almost indefinitely. Whoa. Alright. So with this, what we're looking at here is this ship can get up to... I think it actually just shows you on the chart here. Let's go to navigation. Yeah, 449. So again, not that zippy. This thing is slow. The defense on this doesn't have anything to speak of. But you can use armor or the shield. The shield, I have the large shield booster on this particular one still. That doesn't need to be a thing. You don't have to have that. You can really use whatever you want. The main thing here is whenever you have one of these active, you're sitting at 860 DPS, 888, because technically the drone will be active on there. And this thing lasts for quite a while once you have the skills in it. So it's still chilling. Look at that. Still active. When that one ends, you can start the other one. We have 60 seconds. So when I say you can have these things up almost indefinitely, yeah, I do mean almost indefinitely. So we're down to 40 seconds, a little less when this one runs out. Then you start this one. And I guess this would be a reason to put a 4th one on there. If you put a 4th one on there, you can run this indefinitely. So you got 12 seconds remaining. So basically this thing can run with over 800 DPS and all the time. And if you did take off this and throw on a 4th, you crazy people, you're still going to move at that slower speed, but again, if you're up close like that, then you should be able to grab all the loot relatively quick anyway. You're not flying all the way across the map. And now we have 4 on. Now we're sitting at just shy of 700 DPS cold. Or 727 including the drone. And if you want to see what this one runs at, and it can, as long as you're just activating one at a time, run indefinitely. We still have the large shield booster on there, so you will be able to repair. You just won't have the tank that you did. Let's go ahead and activate one of these. Go to fitting. We're at 872 DPS. So this can do 872 DPS all of the time, as long as you manage your cooldowns of each one. And for all you crazy people out there that want to see its maximum DPS, if you burned them all at one time, it's 1228.52 with my current level skills. So that is the most DPS I can get out of this thing. And for about... how long do these things run on my ship? "23 seconds. So that's where I'm at. What skills affect that? I think I can get this up still a bit more. Yeah, I'll get an additional 2 seconds out of expert once it's done. None there. Yeah, about 1, 2. So I'm gonna get 2 here, 1 there. That's 3. 4, 5. 5? I think I'll get about 5 more seconds out of this total once skills are completely maxed out. Which, again, longer it runs, the better. So that is the ultimate DPS version of this particular ship. Doesn't really do anything but DPS. And with those skills trained, it will be more DPS as well. You would be probably 750 DPS, if not more, with those skills trained. The other build that you can do with this particular ship is the long range build. And that is going to use these beam lasers here. So, coming out the gate with my skills, this has 31 optimal range. So it hits about 44 and some change till it gets to 50%, which again I wouldn't recommend fighting over that. You can, but 50% is already weak. But you're at like 55, 50 range, somewhere in that area. So with this build, you can't do the same thing. The tracking computers themselves only have a 10-second activation time, and as far as I'm aware, yeah, activation time is 10 seconds and nothing adjusts that. Nothing that I'm aware of anyway. So you still do want to make sure that you can move around. So with something like this, you want to probably a micro warp drive. And you just need a little bit of something to heal some incidental damage that you might receive. Now with this particular one, we don't have much more that we can do. So when you don't have a lot more that you can put in on here, and that's just because I'm running the micro warp drive. You could take the micro warp drive out and put something else in, and you can get more. For example, if you just wanted to do minor movements, you could always go with that. And you can use, I don't know, again, I like damage. You could increase the range even further if you wanted to. Will a heatsink fit? Yeah, heatsink will fit. Alright, so this is 522 DPS. We're at long range, so we can make use of a target painter. Now the target painter, I don't have any skills really in it, but this goes up to 63, 70, 80, 88. 88 will be at 50%, which at full at 25. Signature radius is 25%, so it's going to be a very marginal help. Obviously, better ones would do better. But you're at 522 DPS. Our optimal range is 39, 55, so you can sit out at 55 comfortably and fire on people. Now one of the things with this though, if you activate 1, you're at 57 range optimally, and you can get up to 80k range before you're at 50% or over. So you can sit out there for about 20 seconds and fire at 80k range. So as you're coming in, you can get some good volleys off on here. Also too, those particular volleys, if you have your damage up, you can get up to 652 DPS with those. Ignore the drone damage in this particular boat, it's never going to come into effect. This 28 km, you're always going to be outside of it. So, drone doesn't matter. Again, if you activate this, it's going to let you maneuver around a little bit. I don't normally use this particular fit very often, but if you're going in with other people and you have somebody who's going to be a dedicated tank, they're going to be going in there and brawling and taking a majority of the damage, then a good thing to actually do would probably be to fit this thing out for the longer range, where you can sit back and still do a great amount of damage. I mean, you're looking at our range at 522 DPS cold. So that's definitely not too terrible. I don't know if he would be able to, but let's take a look. Yeah, this doesn't use any power grid whatsoever. So for the group, if you're actually trying to help people out, what is the range on these two? 12 km? Yeah. If it's 12 km, you'd all have to have range boats, so this really wouldn't do you any good. But I was going to say you could put some the group armor reppers on here, but no, the group armor reppers would probably be better if everybody was going to be up close and brawling on one of the other builds. However, if you are sitting back with other sniper ships, then you can use those to help mitigate the damage that's going to come in from those longer range ships that are going to be able to actually hit you guys. Especially if you're doing T10s or whatnot. You could actually fit, because technically you don't need any of these, you could fit all 3 of these on here, and large ones would probably be even better, but with 3 of those, I mean, you're doing, I don't know, 400 basically armor repair. That's every 18 seconds, but it'd be on top of what they're actually repping themselves for. And if you've got a whole group of people these and they're all staggering those, that's constant armor repair that you're going to be receiving. As long as everybody has a type of armor rep ship. If your allies are all bringing shield tank ships, then you might want to look into bringing the remote shield repairers. So that's the long range version. Now, one of the things that's funny about this, and I did this just for fun, it has absolutely no use whatsoever. Again, if you do this, because you can't actually get the extension for these things, they're only ever going to last 10 seconds. And there really isn't, you're never going to be able to keep them on with their 60-second cooldown. You would have to have 7 to have all 6 of them run through. And you can only fit 5, so you're never going to have 100% uptime. It's just not going to happen. Now, these take up a lot of power grids, so the most I can actually fit on here is 4. Whenever you do this, I don't have anything for power grid really left over. So, what do you do whenever you have no power grid? We'll put damage control on there. And I should have changed over. But we have a damage control. If anything ever does hit us, we'll activate our damage control and get out. But the main purpose of this, to see, we're sitting at 43. Basically, you have a 60 km range at 50% damage. Now, that by itself is not very impressive. But 91 km with 34 fall off. That's basically 126 km away. For 10 seconds, you can shoot them. So that's over 100 km range for 10 seconds. Not very useful, but hey, it's something that can be done. Now, one of the real things that you can actually do with this ship if you are trying to make a ranged version, and I did experiment around with this, which is why I actually do have 3 of these armor wrappers. You can carry around 3 armor wrappers for incidental damage that you may take, since you are going to be fighting extreme ranges. You bring in a... This is my micro warp drive, right? Yeah. And that gives us 2 power grid left. With 2 power grid, what do? You fit in. I hate going through all this stuff. A damage control. And this is actually a optimal build. It does work. You're only at 488 DPS in this particular build. There is no way to increase that, so that is what your damage is going to be. You are sitting at 42, I don't know, 58, 57, somewhere around there. I don't know, I was just trying to do quick math, which I'm very bad at. But regardless, you can literally sit at 60k range without actually having to activate anything, which 60k range is still a pretty decent. And just to kind of show you, I will actually take this one out and show you a mission. one of the things you do want to do, those armor reppers, they use fuel. So you do want to keep a stockpile of fuel around, but if you're just doing regular missions and you're not looking at getting anything out of it, especially loot. Oh, where is my ship? Alright. So we'll take this one out and we'll go take a look and just see the ludicrous ranges. And when I say ludicrous range, I'm just meaning ludicrous for these particular lasers. Obviously, if you're running cannons or missiles, you can definitely get much farther.
Warp drive active.
So with this build you have incidental damage, and you can dictate how much incidental damage you actually want to heal, and that is if you do need to heal any. You have range control here, which means that you can actually warp in and start at a pretty good distance away and still hit ships. You want to come in to, again, probably about 60, if not a little closer. Yeah, 55. And 55 is kinda where you would want to sit at, which you can dictate range pretty well with a micro warp drive, and at that particular range you shouldn't have any real issues. Depending on what you're doing, you can actually replace these slots as well. If you do have a large, I believe a large will fit on here, they just actually use more fuel, and the larges are actually better bang for your buck, but they're extremely expensive. So, being extremely expensive kind of deters me for something I may never really use. But all of your drone boats can get like real far range. Missiles can too, everybody can. But I like lasers. Alright, so for our cosmic anomaly here, let's warp in at 60.
Warp drive active.
Now the damage in this ship is weak comparatively to the other builds that we had, sitting only at 488. But you could probably get rid of one of the tracking computers and add a damage mod to get over 500 and still have decent range. What I can say is using a little bit of a speed tank with just an afterburner on a Navy issue Caracal, sitting at about 42 km, I was able to do sweet poison. Okay. So we're going to set our orbit to 60. We're going to lock up everybody. And obviously at 40 we're able to hit just fine. We're at 50. We're doing less damage. 56, 58. 1,300. There we go, hitting the armor. The first hits on these guys are always going to be higher because we're going against their shields. After that, you'll start seeing regular hits versus their armor, which has more resistances. So we're sitting at 58 km. It's hitting relatively okay at 58 km. Let's push it out further. 59, 60 km, 62. Okay, so now we're starting to hit numbers where we're hitting pretty weak. 66, we're hitting 0. Alright, so we had a miss. We're at 72. We can still hit out here at 73. But it is not doing much damage. But if you activate one of these... dead. So these guys are way, way out there. Stop, you're not going to be able to hit that. But I do want to test something. Alright, so he's at 93 km. Can we hit him? Yes, we can. So if we activate 2 of these, we can hit at 90 out. Now it's not going to last long. But it can be done. So 85, we're not really hitting much of anything. Let's approach. Transversal velocity works in both ways, so if I approach straight onto him and if he's approaching straight onto me, alright, so we're back in range here. So if we orbit, let's do 56. As we started turning there, our transverse velocity affected our hit. Now as you can see, this particular one, even though we can't hit at these extreme ranges, it is definitely not quicker. Nice. So these are very, very, very slow encounters, but ultimately very, very safe encounters. As you can see, we haven't taken a point of damage yet. Now, these lasers do take a ton of capacitor to fire. We're still hitting stuff out here at 67. Micro warp drive also takes quite a bit too, and as you can see here, this ship is slow. It might get up to 1,000. But as you're playing, you can just activate these whenever you need to. And when you're sitting at this much of a range, you're not actually playing the quick game. You're playing a waiting game, so you can still do some pretty extreme damage from this far away. And that's it. Now, your loot, that's going to take a ton of time to get. And if you have your oh crap button for a little bit, you got a little bit of resistances here, so you can actually survive while you get the heck out. Yeah, this thing is slow. So slow. 938, it doesn't even hit 1,000. So yeah, getting your loot at the end of battle, it's going to be doable, but you're going to be way far away. And if you do replace this with something like an afterburner, you definitely are going to keep your range. But I mean, technically, if you're going to be at these extreme ranges, most ships shouldn't have weapons that can hit you out there. So you don't have to really worry about the 500% size increase. I mean, it's going to make you the size of a battleship, and probably bigger. But, I mean, does it really matter? This ship doesn't go fast at all. It's not like it's going to get missed. There may be something to that. Not 100% sure. But again, if you're playing at these ranges here, you shouldn't have anything to really worry about. And as you can see, even with the micro warp drive running pretty much constantly in this particular build, when I was going to get that loot there, your capacitor is okay, because the only thing you're using it for is the extreme draw of those beam energy weapons. So was this particular one faster? Oh heck no, I would not recommend using this particular build at all for just regular missions. Would not recommend it at all. But if you're trying to do some of the harder missions out there and you do not want to be up close and personal to everyone, and you're worried that your tank is going to fail, or you just prefer the more laid back, completely safe style of range tanking, you can do the range tank with lasers. So it works. It's a-okay. Yeah, you gotta put some range helpers, little aids in there to get up there. I think with my Caldari Navy issue, running regular missiles, not the rapids, I think I only had one and I was able to get up to 42. But 42 is literally was the end range of that particular ship, and you could probably get it up to 50, if not a little bit more with the right skills. But obviously you're not going to hit the range of cannons, but it's still good enough if you do like the range kiting playstyle.
Warp drive active.
Obviously this is not a top-end line micro warp drive either, so you could probably fit in a C-type micro warp drive. Like, I don't have the power grid for it here, but this is only an energy router prototype, 4.5%. If I did increase this one to a 1 or a 2, I might be able to get the extra power necessary to actually fit that in there and add yourself even more speed. But those are my different fits with the Harbinger that I use. Those were my particular fits. Now I guess the very last fit that you could possibly do is a normal fit, an armor tank fit. Now there's a couple of different versions of armor tanks, but like I said, I never really armor tanked this thing too terribly much. The only time that I did was, again, when I was using the group armor uppers here. And that was mainly for experimental stuff. But if you wanted to make this thing as tanky as humanly possible, we can go through that. Let's go ahead and fit... Well, we might not even need the extra speed if we're doing this. Alright. Let's get our armor upper. And some people would prefer to dual rep. I don't want to dual rep. Probably should get some better armor hardeners. But we'll put a sparkling on here. wish they had a way to sort this. Now, ultimately, if you want to go, again, like I said, I run this with no afterburner all the time because the afterburner, it does help, but not too terribly much. Then we can put probably a serious tank on this thing. Get ourselves 2 armor hardeners. That. And our top slots. This would be an up close and personal build. It is just quicker to do it this way. We have plenty of power grid left over. So probably this one I would want to use 2 to help support the tank. And a stasis webifier. Now this is sitting at 593 DPS with a thick boy tank. And let's see what this thick boy tank looks like. Alright, so this is sitting at 71, 62, 56, and 54, and it is going to adjust slightly based off of what you are fighting to actually give you more resistances to one than the other. But everything is actually over the 50% here. Let's take a look. This would be cap stable if you had both of these actually running. So at 593 DPS cap stable, this 593 DPS, well, I mean, technically it is going to be the full 622 because we are going to be within range, sitting at about 18 km off, which again isn't true. We're going to actually want to try to stay 12 km. And I believe yeah. So if you actually trained up these skills here, you would definitely be able to get those higher. I do like that, which you would definitely probably want to do if you're in my shoes. But again, I'm working on my lasers first, then I'm going to go back and start working on the rest of the stuff. But even at sitting at my skills, this thing is cap stable with, I guess, pretty good resistances. Those aren't extra stellar. I mean, there's definitely defense ships that would have much better than this, a much heftier tank, but this would actually end up being a little bit better too if I upgraded all of these. I mean, this is a metal level 8, 5, and 5, so this still definitely has some room for an improvement. And these, they're actually going to be increasing more with, if you had the metal level 8 ones, they would give you more range as well on top of that. And this one here is sitting at 13k. As soon as those kick in for the extension of those as well, if you had a meta level 8, you might be able to actually sit out at about 18 km range and still be able to NOS and web all the targets that you need to and sit with a tank and be just fine. And what we're looking at here is, even with my particular setup for offense, I'm at 593 DPS. As soon as my latest skill finishes, which 31 hours we're looking at. What am I training here? I think still, yeah. Expert. So that'll put it to level 3. So I'm going to get 2% more damage. That'll definitely push it over. So this thing is going to be over 600 DPS with a sizable tank and the ability to NOS back to stay cap stable. The only thing that this doesn't really have going for it is it's still only going to be repping for 548, and activation time for me is 7.44. Again, my skills really do suck when it comes to tanking. And so my armor operation is only 4, advanced is 3, no expert, armor hardening is 5, and advanced armor hardening and expert I haven't even picked up. So hot garbage. If I had this here, yeah, it would go to 15 and 15 for the activation time. So, well, that's it. That's actually all the builds that I have to show. Oh, I can't find my space station. There we go. Now, obviously, there are going to be plenty of other builds that are going to be out there that are going to be viable and work. I mean, on here too. This particular one, you can actually do away with the extender if you don't want to be as tanky of a boy and put in more damage, stuff like that. There's all sorts of things that you can do. But I just wanted to kind of go through and show you all the different types of fittings that we can put on this thing, and show you how some of those actually worked in action. I will be back. I will be trying different ones out with some storyline missions, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.